Security, remove this child before he embarrasses himself further. Victor Whitmore's voice cut through the grand ballroom like a knife. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across marble floors. 200 guests in tuxedos and designer gowns turned to watch. Jalen Brooks stood motionless on the red carpet. 12 years old, worn Converse sneakers, faded denim jacket over a white t-shirt, backpack straps digging into his shoulders. A woman in diamonds whispered to her husband, "Is that someone's son? Why is he dressed like that?" Another executive pulled out his phone, started recording. Victor Whitmore walked closer. 6'2", custom Italian suit, silver hair, perfectly styled, Rolex Submariner catching the light. He looked down at Jalen like a man examining an insect. "Son, this is a private event. Shareholders and executives only." His tone dripped with condescension. "Did you follow the catering staff through the wrong door?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Jalen didn't move. His dark eyes met Victor's without blinking. "I'm asking you a question, young man." Victor's smile was cruel now. "Who do you belong to?" More phones came out. This was about to become viral content. Jalen adjusted his backpack straps. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but clear. "I don't belong to anyone, Mr. Whitmore, but this company belongs to me." The laughter got louder. Someone in the back shouted, "That's rich." Victor Whitmore's grin widened. "Oh, we've got a comedian. Let me guess. You think because your mother cleans the offices, that makes you an owner?" The crowd was fully engaged now, watching a powerful man destroy a child who didn't know his place. Jalen reached into his jacket pocket. Victor took a step back. "Careful now." But Jalen only pulled out a folded envelope. Cream-colored paper. Expensive stock. The Brooks Industries seal embossed in gold. He held it out. Said nothing. Victor snatched it, confident this was some kind of joke. He unfolded the document, eyes scanning quickly, then slower, then stopping completely. The color drained from his face. "What's wrong, Victor?" someone called out. "What does it say?" Victor's hand trembled, just slightly. This can't be." Jalen spoke again, calm and measured. "Majority shareholder, 91% controlling interest. Inherited from my parents, Marcus and Diana Brooks. The same parents whose private jet crashed 8 months ago. The same parents whose funeral you didn't attend." The ballroom went silent. "I'm Jalen Marcus Brooks." He looked around at the crowd, at all the recording phones. "And I'm here to meet the board who's been running my company. Starting with you, Mr. Whitmore. The man my parents hired 3 years ago. The man they trusted." Victor's mouth opened. Nothing came out. Have you ever watched someone realize they just destroyed their entire career in 30 seconds? 6 hours earlier, Jalen woke up at 5:30 a.m. in his bedroom at the Brooks estate. The room was too big now. King-size bed in the corner. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Pacific. His mom's interior designer had called it a young man's sanctuary. That was before the crash. Now it just felt empty. He got dressed carefully. Black slacks, white button-down shirt, the denim jacket that used to be his dad's. It still smelled like him, leather and coffee and that cologne from Italy. Downstairs, the kitchen lights were already on. Patricia Chun sat at the counter with her laptop. 58 years old, sharp features, reading glasses on a chain, navy blazer even at dawn. "Morning, Jalen." She poured him orange juice without looking up. "Did you review the documents I sent?" "Yeah." He sat down across from her. All of them. Patricia had been his parents' CFO for 12 years. Now, she lived in the guest wing, managing the transition, making sure a 12-year-old could survive inheriting a billion-dollar empire. "Tell me what happens tonight," she said. Jalen took a breath. The Q4 Shareholders Gala. Board members, major investors, division heads. Victor Whitmore will present annual performance. "And your role?" "I'm supposed to observe. Learn faces. Stay quiet." Patricia closed her laptop, looked at him directly. "Jalen, I need to tell you something about Victor." His stomach tightened. "Adult conversations that started like this were never good. Your parents were planning to fire him. Right before the accident, the orange juice turned sour in his mouth." "Why?" "Financial irregularities. Nothing proven yet, but your father found discrepancies in overseas accounts. He was building a case." "Does Victor know?" We don't think so, but he's been making aggressive moves since the funeral, consolidating power, making decisions without board approval. Jalen stared at his reflection in the granite counter. That's why you want me to go tonight, to remind him who really owns everything. Patricia reached across, squeezed his hand. Your parents built something extraordinary. Victor Whitmore thinks he can take it because you're young, because you're alone. Her eyes were fierce. Show him he's wrong. At 6 p.m., the car arrived. Sleek black Mercedes. Driver in a suit. Patricia rode with him, rehearsing names and faces from her tablet. Victor Whitmore, CEO, 52 years old, MBA from Wharton, former Goldman Sachs. Your father hired him to expand international markets. Jalen watched Los Angeles slide past his window. Sunset painting the buildings gold. Jennifer Park, CMO, 45, Stanford, brilliant strategist, loyal to your mother's vision. The car turned on a Grand Avenue. The Century Plaza Hotel rose ahead like a temple of glass and steel. David Foster, CFO, 61, Harvard, old school, suspicious of Victor's methods. They pulled up to the entrance. Red carpet, photographers, security in black suits. Patricia turned to him. Remember, you're not asking permission. You're announcing your presence. Jalen grabbed his backpack. Patricia had argued against it, but he insisted. It had his father's notebook inside, his mother's watch, things that reminded him why he was here. He stepped out onto the red carpet. The stare started immediately. If you want to see how a quiet boy exposes corruption, dismantles a billion-dollar conspiracy, and proves that age has nothing to do with power, subscribe and hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me, have you ever been underestimated because of how you looked? Because what happens next changes everything. Victor Whitmore stepped closer. The crowd shifted, forming a tighter circle around the red carpet. Phone stayed raised. Everyone wanted to capture this. Victor was 6'2". Jalen was 5'3". The height difference was deliberate theater. Victor positioned himself so his shadow fell across the boy. Let me see that folder. Victor's voice was smooth now, almost friendly, the tone adults use when they're about to teach a child a lesson. Jalen held out the leather portfolio his mother had used for board meetings. Victor took it, but not gently. He yanked it from Jalen's hands hard enough that the boy's arm jerked forward. Let's see what we have here. Victor opened the folder, made a show of examining the contents. Stock certificates, trust documents, letters from the estate attorney. He held up one paper, squinted at it, then laughed. This is adorable. He showed it to the nearest guests. The boy brought his homework. More laughter. A woman in a gold sequin dress covered her mouth, trying to hide her smile. Victor flipped through more pages. Faster now. Rougher. Certificates of ownership. Corporate bylaws. Board resolutions. He shook his head. Someone spent a lot of time at Kinko's. Those are originals, Jalen said quietly. Originals. Victor repeated the word like it was a punchline. Son, I don't know what game you think you're playing, but this is embarrassing. For you and whoever put you up to this. He tilted the folder. Papers slid out, falling onto the red carpet. White sheets against crimson fabric. Jalen watched them fall. Didn't move yet. Oops. Victor's smile was ice. How clumsy of me. More documents spilled. Stock certificates landed face down. The corporate seal of Brooks Industries pressed against the carpet where hundreds of shoes had walked. You know what I think? Victor stepped even closer, lowering his voice so only the front rows could hear. I think someone told you a story. Maybe a relative. Maybe you read something online, and you got confused. He looked at Jalen's clothes. Let his eyes travel slowly from the worn sneakers to the faded jacket. I think you saw pictures of Marcus and Diana Brooks. Beautiful people. Successful people. And you thought, maybe if I show up at their event, claim to be their son, someone will feel sorry for me. A few guests nodded. That made sense to them. A troubled kid seeking attention. But here's what you didn't understand. Victor's tone turned cold. Marcus and Diana Brooks died 8 months ago. Tragic accident. I was devastated. They were my friends. And their son. He paused for effect. Their son is being cared for by professionals. People qualified to handle that kind of responsibility and wealth. Jalen's jaw tightened. just slightly. So I'm going to give you a chance to leave quietly. Victor pulled out his money clip. Thick stack of hundreds. He peeled off 5 bills. $500. He held them out. This should cover your Uber home and maybe a nice dinner. No hard feelings. We all make mistakes. The crowd watched Jalen, waiting to see if he'd take the money. Jalen looked at the bills, then at Victor. Then he bent down slowly, gathering his papers from the carpet. That's right, Victor said. Pick up your mess. Learn from this. But as Jalen collected each document, he moved with careful precision, not scrambling, not embarrassed. His hands were steady. He gathered every page, res-tacked them in order, placed them back in the folder. Behind Victor, 3 men in dark suits exchanged glances. One leaned toward another, whispering urgently. Near the back, a woman in a navy dress, Jennifer Park, CMO, went completely still. Her champagne glass hung forgotten in her hand. She was staring at Jalen's face, really looking at him. Her eyes widened. Victor didn't notice. He was enjoying his performance too much. I employ over 4,000 people, he continued, addressing the crowd now. I've built Brooks Industries into a global leader, and I will not have some child with a folder full of fake papers disrupt an event that honors real achievement. He turned to the security team positioned near the entrance. 2 men in black suits and earpieces. Gentlemen, please escort this young man out of the building. Gently, but firmly. The security guards moved forward. Professional. Efficient. Jalen finished collecting his papers. He stood up, folder tucked under his arm. He didn't look scared. He looked patient, like he was waiting for something. Son, Victor said, and this time his voice carried genuine warning. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. One security guard reached out, hand moving toward Jalen's shoulder. That's when Jennifer Parks set down her champagne glass. She walked forward through the crowd, heels clicking on marble. People parted automatically. She was CMO, board member, second highest ranking executive in the company. Victor, she said, her voice cut through the murmurs. Stop. Victor turned, irritated. Jennifer, this doesn't concern. Look at his face. What? Look at his face. Victor's smile faltered. Jennifer stopped 3 feet from Jalen. She studied him like she was solving a puzzle. The shape of his eyes, the angle of his jaw, the way he stood, shoulders back, chin level, even under pressure. Oh my God, she whispered. You have Diana's eyes. The crowd's energy shifted. People who had been laughing moments ago suddenly looked uncertain. Jennifer's voice got louder. And Marcus's chin. The way you tilt your head when you listen, that's Diana exactly. Victor's face changed. The confident smirk disappeared. Something else replaced it. Something close to panic. Jennifer, you're being ridiculous. When's your birthday, Jalen? Jalen met her eyes. March 15th, 2013. Jennifer turned to Victor. Her expression was granite. Marcus and Diana's son was born March 15th, 2013. At Cedars-Sinai. I was there. I held him in the hospital. The security guard's hand froze inches from Jalen's shoulder. Victor's mouth opened, closed. His carefully constructed authority was cracking in real time. That still doesn't, he started. His name is Jalen Marcus Brooks. Jennifer's voice rang through the ballroom now. Every word sharp and clear. Named after his father. And you just humiliated him in front of 200 witnesses. The phones that had been recording Jalen's supposed humiliation were now capturing something very different. Victor's destruction. The security guard pulled his hand back, stepped away from Jalen like he'd just realized he was reaching toward a live bomb. Jalen spoke for the first time since picking up his papers. His voice was calm, steady, maybe even a little sad. You said my parents were your friends, Mr. Whitmore, but you didn't come to their funeral. You didn't call. You didn't ask how I was doing. He paused. Friends don't do that. Victor's face went red, then pale. He looked around the crowd, at all the recording phones, at Jennifer Park's cold stare, at the board members who were now whispering urgently to each other. I want to see your credentials, Victor said desperately. Proper documentation, witnessed and notarized. Jalen reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out his phone. I can arrange that, he said quietly. Miss Chun is in the lobby. She has everything you need. Corporate counsel, estate attorneys, letters from the probate court. He looked up at Victor. But you should know, my parents kept detailed records of everything. The way he said everything made Victor's hand tremble. Want to see what happens when the board realizes they've been following orders from a man who just committed career suicide on camera? Subscribe now and smash that like button so you don't miss it. Comment below. What would you do if someone publicly humiliated you like this? 6 months before the gala, Jalen woke up at 6:47 a.m. Same time every morning since the accident. His body wouldn't sleep past sunrise anymore. The bedroom was too quiet. 30-foot ceilings, windows overlooking the Pacific. His mom had decorated it 2 years ago. Navy walls, floating shelves, a telescope by the window for stargazing. She called it his captain's quarters. Now it just reminded him she was gone. He got dressed. School uniform, white polo, khaki pants. He left his phone on the nightstand. Couldn't look at the screensaver. Family photo from Christmas. Downstairs, the dining room echoed. 20-foot table, 12 chairs. Jalen sat at the end, feet dangling 6 inches above the floor. A bowl of cereal in front of him, milk getting warm. The house felt like a museum. Everything expensive, everything breakable, everything quiet. On the sideboard, a silver-framed photo caught the morning light. His parents at the Santa Monica Pier. Dad's arm around Mom, both laughing. Jalen was 7 in that picture, hanging off his father's shoulders. Taken 8 days before the Gulf Stream went down over Nevada. Private flight. Late night. Returning from a board meeting in Phoenix. Weather was clear. No distress call. Investigators said it was mechanical failure. Catastrophic and instant. No survivors. That was 11 weeks ago. Jalen pushed his cereal away. Couldn't eat. Footsteps in the hallway. Heels on marble. Evelyn Carter appeared in the doorway. 46 years old. Black woman with natural hair pulled back in a professional bun. Charcoal pantsuit. Leather portfolio under her arm. She'd been his mother's college roommate. Maid of honor at the wedding. His godmother. Now she was his legal guardian. Morning, baby. Her voice was gentle. She sat down 2 chairs away, close but not hovering. How'd you sleep? Jalen shrugged. Okay. Nightmares. Just one. Evelyn reached over, squeezed his hand. She didn't push for details. That was one thing he appreciated. She let him keep some things private. Mr. Hayes will be here at 8, she said. Final review of the trust documents. Jalen's stomach tightened. He nodded. Leonard Hayes arrived exactly at 8. 63 years old. White man with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses. Charcoal suit. Burgundy tie. Leather briefcase worn smooth from decades of use. He'd been the Brooks family attorney for 18 years. Drafted their wills. Managed their estate planning. Now he was making sure a 12-year-old boy could legally control a billion-dollar company. They sat in his father's study. Dark wood paneling. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves. The desk where his dad used to work late into the night. Leonard opened his briefcase with careful precision. Pulled out a stack of documents bound in navy folders. Jalen. Leonard's voice was calm. Clinical. Before we proceed, I need you to explain something to me. In your own words. No legal terms. Jalen sat up straighter. Okay. Tell me what you inherited. Jalen took a breath. He'd been preparing for this. Evelyn had rehearsed it with him a dozen times. I inherited 91% of Brooks Industries. That's controlling ownership. Majority shareholder. What does that mean? It means I own most of the company. I have final authority. Final authority over what? Major decisions. Anything over $10 million. Hiring and firing executives. Selling divisions. Mergers. Acquisitions. Leonard nodded slowly. And who runs the company day to day? The board of directors. 7 members. They handle operations until I turn 18. But you still have power now. Yes. If they want to do something major, I have to approve it. If I say no, it doesn't happen. Leonard leaned back. Studied Jalen over his glasses. Do you understand what that means? Really understand? Jalen met his eyes. It means I can't be a kid anymore. The words hung in the air. Evelyn's hand went to her mouth. Leonard's expression softened, just for a second. Yes, Leonard said quietly. That's exactly what it means. He opened the first folder. Pages and pages of legal language, trusts and bylaws, and fiduciary responsibilities. Your parents were extraordinarily careful, Jalen. They knew the risks of concentrating this much wealth and power. So they built protections. What kind of protections? Evelyn is your legal guardian for personal matters. I'm the executor of the estate. Patricia Chun remains CFO and manages financial oversight. Together, we form a protective barrier. Against what? Leonard exchanged a glance with Evelyn. Against people who would exploit you, he said simply. Corporate raiders, media vultures, extended family members looking for money. People who see a 12-year-old billionaire as an opportunity. Jalen's throat felt tight. So what do? The board voted unanimously to keep your ownership confidential. Publicly, Brooks Industries is run by the board. Your name doesn't appear in press releases. You don't attend events. You don't give interviews. I'm invisible. You're protected, Evelyn corrected gently. Leonard pulled out another document. Victor Whitmore was appointed interim CEO 5 months ago, shortly after your parents' death. The board felt they needed experienced leadership during the transition. Did my parents want him as CEO? Leonard hesitated. Just for a second. Your parents had concerns about Mr. Whitmore's methods. But he's competent. He's grown the company. The board trusts him. Do you trust him? Leonard's pause was longer this time. I trust the board's oversight. And I trust that you'll be ready to exercise your authority when the time comes. Jalen looked at the papers spread across his father's desk. Stock certificates with his name printed in formal script. Corporate resolutions recognizing him as majority shareholder. Letters from the probate court confirming the transfer of assets. All of it real. All of it legal. All of it his. He was 12 years old. He couldn't drive. Couldn't vote. Couldn't buy a lottery ticket. But he owned a company worth $4.7 billion. What if I make a mistake? His voice came out smaller than he wanted. Evelyn moved her chair closer, put her arm around his shoulders. Then you'll have made a mistake as a 12-year-old who lost his parents and inherited an empire he didn't ask for. And we'll help you fix it. Leonard closed his briefcase. Jalen, your parents didn't leave you this responsibility because they thought you were ready. They left it because they knew you'd grow into it. Because they trusted you more than anyone else in the world. He stood up, extended his hand across the desk. Jalen stood too, shook it. His hand looked tiny in Leonard's grip. Welcome to the board, Mr. Brooks. The title sounded wrong. Mr. Brooks was his father, but his father was gone. Now it was just him. Later that night, Jalen sat in his room with the lights off. The city spread out below like a carpet of stars. His phone buzzed. Text from Evelyn. Proud of you today. Your parents would be too. He didn't respond. Just stared at the message until the screen went dark. Somewhere in downtown Los Angeles, in the executive suite of Brooks Industries, Victor Whitmore was working late, making plans, consolidating power, operating like he owned everything. He didn't know Jalen existed. Not yet. But in 6 months, that would change. In 6 months, a 12-year-old boy would walk into a corporate gala in worn sneakers and a denim jacket. And Victor Whitmore would make the biggest mistake of his career. Want to see what the boy discovers about the CEO's corrupt plans and the moment he decides to stop hiding? Subscribe and drop a like right now so you don't miss it. Comment and tell me, could you handle this kind of responsibility at 12 years old? Because the quiet boy with nothing to lose is about to become the most dangerous person in the room. Victor Whitmore became CEO of Brooks Industries on a Tuesday, 3 weeks after Marcus and Diana Brooks died. The board met in emergency session. Conference room on the 40th floor. Leather chairs. Cappuccino machine in the corner. Panic in the air. Jennifer Park spoke first. We need leadership. The stock is dropping. Clients are nervous. We can't run a $5 billion company by committee. David Foster, the CFO, agreed. We need someone with experience. Someone Wall Street respects. Victor sat at the far end of the table. Silent. Composed. Letting them come to the conclusion he'd already planted. Victor has the credentials, Jennifer said. Goldman background. International experience. Marcus trusted him enough to hire him. The vote was unanimous. Interim CEO. Temporary appointment. 6 months to stabilize operations while the estate was settled. Nobody mentioned Jalen. The boy was 12, grieving, under legal protection. The board agreed his ownership would remain confidential. For his safety, they said. For his protection. Victor accepted the position with appropriate humility. Shook everyone's hands. Promised to honor Marcus and Diana's vision. Then he went back to his office and smiled. The first month, Victor was careful. He attended board meetings, presented detailed reports, sought approval for major decisions, played the role of humble servant leader. But he was watching, learning. The board was divided. Jennifer Park wanted to maintain Diana's innovative approach. David Foster wanted conservative fiscal management. The other 5 members were split between camps or simply didn't care enough to fight. No one had time to micromanage. They all had divisions to run, fires to put out, their own careers to protect. So when Victor started making decisions without full board consultation, small things at first, minor contracts, internal promotions, nobody pushed back. Silence looked like approval. By month 2, Victor stopped asking permission for anything under $50 million. By month 3, he stopped mentioning the word interim in external communications. By month 4, he was introduced at conferences as simply CEO of Brooks Industries. The board never corrected him. Victor's confidence grew with the profits. He restructured the international division, cut costs, renegotiated contracts. The stock price climbed. Shareholders were happy. The board was relieved. Nobody questioned his methods because the results spoke for themselves. He hired his own people, former Goldman colleagues, MBAs from Wharton, people who were loyal to him, not to some dead couple's legacy. He moved in the corner office, Marcus Brooks's office, had it redecorated. The family photos were removed and placed in storage. The bookshelves were cleared. Everything personal was erased. It became Victor's office. He never once visited Jalen, never called, never sent more than the standard condolence flowers to the funeral, never asked Evelyn Carter or Leonard Hayes how the boy was managing. It simply never occurred to him that it mattered. In Victor's mind, Jalen was a child, a legal footnote. Ownership was a technicality that would be resolved when the boy turned 18. And 18 was 6 years away. 6 years was forever in business. By then, Victor would be indispensable. The board would make his position permanent. Jalen would be a rich kid with no operational experience, happy to collect dividends while adults ran his company. That's how Victor saw it. How he explained it to himself late at night in his Malibu beach house, drinking single malt scotch and watching the ocean. He wasn't stealing. He was managing. He was protecting value. The boy would thank him someday. Month 5, Victor stopped reporting to the board entirely. He sent quarterly summaries, high-level overviews, profit margins, and growth projections. But the detailed operational decisions, the contracts, the partnerships, the offshore accounts, those stayed in his office. Jennifer Park noticed, sent an email asking for clarification on a Singapore deal. Victor responded with spreadsheets and assurances. She didn't follow up, too busy with a product launch. David Foster questioned an unusual consulting fee, $20 million to a firm none of them had heard of. Victor explained it was standard in international markets. Consultants who understood local regulations. David didn't push. He wasn't an expert in Asian business law. No one was. That was Victor's advantage. He was the expert. They had to trust him because they didn't know enough to question him. So they didn't. By month 6, Victor Whitmore believed he was untouchable. The stock was up 23%. Revenue was projected to hit $6 billion. Forbes was writing profiles. CNBC wanted interviews. He wasn't interim anymore. He was the CEO. In his mind, Brooks Industries was his company now. He'd earned it. Marcus and Diana were gone. The board was passive. The boy was irrelevant. Victor had worked his entire career for this. Goldman was a stepping stone. This was the throne. He started planning long-term. 5-year strategy. International expansion. Potential acquisition targets. He commissioned architects to redesign the executive floor. His vision. His aesthetic. He never asked permission. Why would he? Who was going to stop him? Not Jennifer Park. She was busy running marketing. Not David Foster. He was focused on quarterly earnings. Not the other board members. They barely showed up to meetings anymore. And certainly not a 12-year-old child who'd never set foot in the building. Victor's only mistake was forgetting something fundamental about power. Ownership beats authority. Every time, he confused the board's silence for submission. He mistook Jalen's absence for irrelevance. He assumed that because no one challenged him, no one could. Arrogance is just ignorance wearing expensive cologne. And Victor Whitmore wore Tom Ford. The shareholders' gala was Victor's idea, his moment to cement his legacy. 200 guests, marble and chandeliers, press coverage, a speech about Brooks Industries' remarkable recovery under his leadership. He practiced that speech for weeks, had it memorized, every pause, every gesture. He never imagined a child in worn sneakers would disrupt it, never considered that the boy might show up at all. Why would he? Children don't attend corporate galas. Children don't understand business. Children don't matter. So when Jalen Brooks walked onto that red carpet, Victor Whitmore saw an opportunity. Not a threat, an opportunity. A chance to look strong, decisive, protective of his event and his company. A chance to show 200 witnesses that he was in control. That nothing, not even some confused kid with fake documents, could shake his authority. He grabbed Jalen's folder, let the papers fall, watched the boy bend to collect them, felt the crowd's approval, heard the laughter. This was power, Victor thought. This was leadership. He never noticed Jennifer Park going pale in the back of the room. Never saw David Foster pull out his phone and start texting frantically. Never heard the 3 board members behind Jalen whispering urgently to each other. Victor was too focused on his performance, too confident in his position, too certain that he ruled everything. The security guards reached for Jalen's shoulder, and Victor Whitmore had exactly 4 seconds left before his entire world collapsed. 4 seconds before Jennifer Park said the words that would end his career. 4 seconds before 200 phones captured the moment a child destroyed a king. Back at the gala, present moment. Look at his face, Jennifer Park said. Victor's smile froze, and the countdown began. Want to watch the CEO's empire crumble in real time? Subscribe and hit that like button, because Chapter 5 shows what happens when the board realizes they've been taking orders from a man who just publicly humiliated their actual boss. Comment below. Have you ever seen someone destroy their career in seconds? The reckoning is brutal, it's recorded, and it's about to go viral. Step back. The voice cut through the ballroom like a blade. Security froze, hands still hovering near Jalen's shoulder. Every guest turned toward the source. Eleanor Martinez walked forward through the crowd. 61 years old. Silver hair, cut sharp at her shoulders. Burgundy evening gown. Diamond earrings that caught the chandelier light. She moved with the kind of authority that doesn't need to be loud. She was the board chair. Had been for 12 years. Marcus and Diana Brooks had appointed her personally. Ms. Martinez, Victor said, forcing a smile. I have this under control. Just a minor disruption. I said step back. Eleanor's eyes stayed fixed on the security guards. Now, they stepped back. Immediately. Victor's smile tightened. Eleanor, I appreciate your concern, but this child has been disrupting a private event. We need to. Victor. Eleanor stopped 5 feet from him. Her tone was ice wrapped in velvet. Be quiet. The ballroom went silent. 200 people held their breath. Victor's face flushed. Excuse me. You hurt me. Eleanor turned to address the entire room. Her voice carried without effort, clear, measured, absolute. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the disruption. There's been a misunderstanding that requires immediate clarification. Victor opened his mouth. Eleanor raised one finger. He closed it. She walked to Jalen, looked down at him with an expression that was somehow both fierce and gentle. Are you all right, Jalen? He nodded. Yes, ma'am. Good. She turned back to the crowd. For those who don't know me, I'm Eleanor Martinez, chair of the Brooks Industries Board of Directors. I've held this position for 12 years. I knew Marcus and Diana Brooks personally. I was at their wedding. I held their son in the hospital the day he was born. Jennifer Park moved closer to the front. David Foster followed. 3 other board members materialized from different parts of the room. Eleanor continued. When Marcus and Diana died 8 months ago, This board made several critical decisions. One of those decisions was to appoint Victor Whitmore as interim CEO, temporary leadership during a period of transition and grief. Victor's jaw tightened. Eleanor, this isn't the time. Another decision, Eleanor's voice rose slightly, was to protect the identity and privacy of the majority shareholder. A child who'd just lost both parents. A child who inherited not just wealth, but responsibility he never asked for. Whispers rippled through the crowd. Eleanor looked directly at Victor. Victor, you've been operating under several dangerous assumptions. The first is that interim means permanent. It doesn't. The board voted. The board appointed you temporarily. We never made you permanent. We never even discussed it. Victor's face went pale. Eleanor gestured toward Jalen. The second assumption is that this child is irrelevant. That's perhaps your most catastrophic mistake. She pulled out her phone, tapped the screen twice. Behind her, the massive LED display, meant for Victor's presentation, flickered to life. Documents appeared. Legal letterhead. Court seals. Official stamps. Let me be extremely clear, Eleanor said. Jalen Marcus Brooks is not a confused child who wandered into this event. He is the majority shareholder of Brooks Industries. The numbers appeared on screen, 91.4% controlling interest. The room gasped. Inherited directly from Marcus and Diana Brooks through an irrevocable trust. Confirmed by probate court. Certified by the Securities and Exchange Commission. Legal, binding, and absolute. More documents filled the screen. Trust agreements, stock certificates, letters from federal regulators. Jalen's name was on every page. Phones that had stopped recording out of shock suddenly lifted again. This was no longer a child being humiliated. This was a CEO being destroyed. Eleanor walked to the center of the red carpet. Victor, you've spent 6 months operating like you own this company. You restructured divisions without board approval. You signed contracts exceeding your authority. You made executive appointments that required shareholder consent. I was stabilizing operations. You were consolidating power. Eleanor's voice was steel, and you did it without ever once asking permission from the person who actually owns the company. Victor looked around wildly, at the board members, at the guests, at the phones recording everything. This is absurd. He's 12 years old. He can't possibly. He can. David Foster stepped forward. CFO, numbers guy. His voice was flat and factual. Legally, he is final authority on any decision involving more than $10 million. Hiring, firing, acquisitions, major contracts. You've exceeded that threshold 43 times in 6 months. Victor's confident posture crumbled. His shoulders sagged slightly. The board never objected. Because we trusted you, Jennifer Park said quietly. We thought you understood your role. Temporary, supervised, accountable. Eleanor's expression didn't soften. You never even visited him, Victor. Never called. Never asked how he was managing. You sent flowers to the funeral and then pretended he didn't exist. I was focused on the company. You were focused on yourself. Eleanor's words landed like hammer blows. And 30 minutes ago, you humiliated the actual owner of this company in front of 200 witnesses and dozens of cameras. The LED screen changed. Showed Victor grabbing Jalen's folder. Documents falling. Victor's mocking smile. Someone in the crowd had already uploaded it. You grabbed his documents. Threw them on the floor. Called them fake. Mocked his appearance. Offered him money like he was begging. Eleanor's voice dropped to something dangerous. And you did all of this while believing you were untouchable. Victor's hands were shaking now. The Rolex on his wrist caught the light. Suddenly, it looked less like power and more like costume jewelry. Eleanor, I didn't know. That's the problem, Victor. You didn't know because you didn't care to know. You assumed. You ignored. You acted like ownership was a technicality instead of reality. The room watched Victor's face cycle through emotions. Confusion, anger, fear, desperation. His voice came out smaller. What happens now? Eleanor looked at Jalen. That's not my decision. It's his. Every eye turned to the 12-year-old boy in worn sneakers and a denim jacket. Jalen stood there, papers in hand, backpack on his shoulders. He looked impossibly young under the chandeliers, but his voice was steady. Mr. Whitmore, you asked me earlier what happens now. He paused. Let the silence stretch. I'd like to see those detailed records Ms. Chen mentioned. The Singapore contracts, the consulting fees, the offshore accounts. Victor's face went white. And then Jalen continued, I'd like the board to explain why nobody noticed you were operating without oversight. Why nobody checked? Why nobody asked questions? He looked at Eleanor, at Jennifer, at David Foster. My parents trusted all of you. I need to understand if that trust was misplaced. Eleanor's expression flickered. Surprise, respect, something almost like pride. Victor tried one last time. Jalen, I was trying to protect what your parents built. My parents built a company based on integrity, Jalen said quietly. You built a kingdom based on assumption. Those aren't the same thing. The LED screen still showed Victor's face from 30 minutes ago. Confident, mocking, powerful. Next to it, a new image appeared. Live feed from someone's phone. Victor now, pale, shaking, cornered. The contrast was devastating. Eleanor's voice filled the silence. This meeting is adjourned. Board members, my office. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Victor, you're suspended pending investigation. Security will escort you out. Different security now. Not the ones who'd reach for Jalen. The boy faces the board alone, exposes the full depth of corruption, and makes a decision that will either save the company his parents built or destroy it completely. Smash that like button and comment. What would be your first move in his position? The boy's just getting started. Victor Whitmore stood frozen on the red carpet. 2 security guards flanked him. Not touching, not threatening, just present. Eleanor, wait. His voice cracked slightly. We can discuss this privately. Tomorrow morning, I'll explain the decisions I made. The board will understand. The board understands perfectly. Eleanor's tone was final. You abused your authority. You exceeded your mandate. And you publicly humiliated a child who happens to own the company you've been running like your personal kingdom. David Foster stepped forward, reading from his phone. Brooks Industries Code of Conduct, Section 4.2. Any officer who engages in abusive behavior toward employees, stakeholders, or shareholders is subject to immediate suspension pending investigation. I didn't abuse. You threw his documents on the floor, Jennifer Park said quietly. You mocked his appearance. You offered him money to leave like he was a beggar. 200 people watched. Dozens recorded it. Victor turned to the other board members. Michael, Sandra, you know the work I've done. The growth. The profits. Michael Chun, VP of Operations, looked at the floor. Profit doesn't excuse conduct, Victor. Sandra Williams, General Counsel, shook her head. I can't defend this, legally or ethically. Victor's voice rose slightly. This is one incident, one misunderstanding. You're throwing away 6 months of successful leadership because of 43 unauthorized decisions, David interrupted. Contracts exceeding your authority. Offshore accounts we never approved. Consulting fees to firms nobody on this board has heard of. He looked up from his phone. Want me to continue? The ballroom was silent. Eleanor's voice cut through. Victor Whitmore, effective immediately, you are suspended from all duties as CEO of Brooks Industries. You are barred from company facilities pending a full investigation into financial irregularities and ethical violations. You can't do this. The board votes unanimously. Eleanor looked at each member. All in favor. 7 hands rose. No hesitation. Motion carries. Eleanor turned to the security guards. Please escort Mr. Whitmore from the premises. He's not to access company systems, contact company employees, or remove any materials from his office. Victor's face cycled through emotions. Disbelief, rage, panic. I made this company profitable. I saved it after Marcus died. You need me. We needed someone we could trust, Eleanor said quietly. You proved we couldn't. The security guards moved closer. Professional, calm, the same way they'd been trained to remove any disruptive guest. Victor looked around desperately, at the board members who wouldn't meet his eyes, at the guests who'd been laughing with him 30 minutes ago, at the phones still recording. This is a mistake, he said. His voice was smaller now. You'll regret this. Perhaps. Eleanor's expression didn't change. But regret we can live with. Complicity we cannot. The guards touched Victor's elbows gently, guiding him toward the exit. The same exit Jalen had almost been forced through. Victor tried to pull away. I can walk myself out. Company policy, one guard said. All suspended personnel must be escorted. The crowd parted. A path opened across the marble floor. Victor walked it slowly, each step heavier than the last. His Italian shoes clicking on stone. His perfect posture crumbling. Nobody spoke. Nobody laughed. They just watched. The man who'd ruled Brooks Industries for 6 months was escorted out like a stranger who'd overstayed his welcome. The doors closed behind him with a soft click. Silence filled the ballroom. Jalen bent down, collected the last few papers scattered on the red carpet. His hands were steady now. No trembling. He stacked each document carefully, slid them back into the leather folder. His mother's folder. Eleanor watched him, waited. When Jalen stood up, he looked small again. Just a 12-year-old in a jacket too big for him, sneakers that had seen better days. But his voice carried. I'm sorry for disrupting your evening. 200 faces stared back at him. I didn't come here to embarrass anyone. I didn't come for revenge. He paused, chose his words carefully. I came because my parents built something they believed in. A company that treated people with dignity, that valued integrity over profit. Jennifer Park's eyes glistened. Mr. Whitmore forgot that. Or maybe he never understood it. Jalen's voice was steady. Calm. But leadership isn't about power. It's not about who can intimidate who. It's not about cruelty. He looked at Eleanor, at the board members. My parents trusted you to protect what they built. Not just the profits. The principles. He took a breath. I need to know if you still remember what those are. Eleanor nodded slowly. We do, Jalen. And we're sorry we let you down. You let them down, he corrected quietly. But we can fix it. Together. The room stayed silent. No applause. No cheers. No dramatic movie moment. Just 200 people confronting the reality that they'd laughed at a child being humiliated. That they pulled out their phones to record it. That they'd been complicit. A woman in the back, executive VP of something, set down her champagne glass and left. Couldn't meet anyone's eyes. Others followed. Quiet exits. Ashamed. The remaining guests stood in uncomfortable silence. The kind of silence that forces self-reflection. Jalen adjusted his backpack straps. Ms. Martinez, you said board meeting tomorrow at 9? Yes. I'll be there. He looked around the ballroom one last time. At the chandeliers. The marble. The wealth on display. And I'll have questions. A lot of them. Eleanor's expression was something between respect and concern. I expect nothing less. Jalen walked toward the exit. The crowd parted automatically. Jennifer Park stepped forward. Jalen, wait. He turned. She knelt down to his eye level. Her voice cracked. Your mother was my best friend. I should have checked on you. Should have visited. Should have made sure you were okay. Tears ran down her face, ruining her makeup. I'm so sorry. Jalen's composure wavered. Just slightly. She wants you to fix the company, he said quietly. That's how you make it right. Jennifer nodded. Couldn't speak. Jalen continued to the exit. Evelyn Carter was waiting in the lobby, exactly where she'd been told to stay. She saw his face and knew immediately. How bad, she asked. Victor's gone. Board meeting tomorrow. He paused. They recorded everything. Good. They walked to the car in silence. Behind them, the gala dissolved. Guests leaving early. Board members gathering in tight circles. Staff cleaning up champagne glasses and scattered papers. The LED screen still displayed Victor's face from earlier. Confident, powerful, untouchable. Someone finally turned it off. The ballroom felt smaller in the darkness. Less impressive, more honest. Eleanor stood alone on the red carpet. She pulled out her phone, texted the board, emergency audit, everything. 6 months of decisions. I want every contract, every payment, every decision Victor made reviewed by Friday. 7 responses came back immediately, agreed. Outside, Jalen climbed into the Mercedes. Evelyn sat beside him. You did good, baby, she said softly. Jalen stared out the window, watched Los Angeles slide past. All those buildings, All those people, all that power built on assumptions. Dad would have handled it better, he said quietly. Your dad will be proud of how you handled it. Evelyn squeezed his hand. And your mom would have loved that you didn't yell, didn't curse, didn't stoop. I wanted to. I know. That's why it mattered that you didn't. The car turned toward home, toward the empty house, toward a bedroom that still felt too big and too quiet. Tomorrow, Jalen would face the board, would review Victor's decisions, would start making choices that would affect thousands of lives. But tonight, he was just a 12-year-old who missed his parents. And that was enough. Subscribe, because coming next reveals what happens when the boy enters the boardroom alone and discovers just how deep the corruption goes and which board members knew about it. Hit that like button and drop a comment. Is forgiveness or accountability more important? Because the hardest decisions aren't about firing the guilty. They're about forgiving the complicit. Jalen pushed through the glass doors into the cool Los Angeles night. The air hit his face. Sharp, clean, different from the perfume and tension inside. Behind him, the gala continued in muted chaos. Board members huddled in corners. Guests whispered urgently. Staff collected abandoned champagne glasses from tables where people had left mid-conversation. But Jalen was done. He walked down the wide stone steps. Same steps he climbed 40 minutes ago, when he was just a kid who might get thrown out. Now security nodded as he passed. The valet stand was ahead. Luxury cars lined up like jewels. Bentleys, Teslas, a Rolls-Royce with a custom paint job that probably cost more than most people's houses. Jalen's Mercedes looked modest by comparison. Evelyn Carter stood beside it, leaning against the hood, arms crossed, waiting exactly where she'd promised to be. She saw him coming and straightened, studied his face in the streetlight. How you holding up? Jalen stopped in front of her, adjusted his backpack straps. Tired? I bet. She placed a hand on his shoulder. Warm, steady, grounding. They didn't need more words than that. Behind them, footsteps on stone. Eleanor Martinez appeared at the top of the steps, still in her burgundy gown, still carrying herself like authority incarnate. She descended slowly, heels clicking. When she reached them, she looked at Jalen with an expression that was complicated: respect, regret, determination. Jalen, I want you to know something. Her voice was quieter now. Private. What happened tonight will never happen again. Not under my watch. He met her eyes. You said that about Victor. You appointed him. Eleanor didn't flinch. You're right. We failed you. We failed your parents. We let Victor operate unchecked because it was easier than oversight. Because the numbers looked good. Because we were tired and grieving, and we took the easy path. Evelyn's hand tightened slightly on Jalen's shoulder. Tomorrow morning, everything changes, Eleanor continued. Full audit. Every decision Victor made. Every contract. Every payment. If there's corruption, we expose it. If there's theft, we prosecute. If board members were complicit, they're gone. Including you? Jalen asked. Eleanor paused, then nodded. Including me. If the audit shows I should have known, should have caught something I missed, then yes. I'll resign. I don't want you to resign, Jalen said quietly. I want you to fix it. Something in Eleanor's expression softened. Then that's what we'll do. She extended her hand. Formal, respectful. Jalen shook it. His hand disappeared in hers, but his grip was firm. Eleanor walked back toward the hotel, pulled out her phone before she even reached the doors. Already making calls. Already starting. Evelyn opened the car door. Come on, baby. Let's go home. Jalen climbed into the back seat, sank into leather that still smelled faintly like his father's cologne. The car pulled away from the curb. Through the rear window, he watched the Century Plaza Hotel shrink behind them. Lived like a palace, full of people who thought they ruled the world. Evelyn, yeah. Do you think Dad would have handled it differently? She glanced at him in the rearview mirror. Your dad would have walked in there in a three-piece suit and torn Victor apart in front of everyone. Made him beg for mercy. Jalen looked down at his worn sneakers, his faded jacket. But your mama, Evelyn continued, would have done exactly what you did. Stayed calm, spoke clearly, let the truth do the work. She smiled. You're a little of both. And that's perfect. The car turned on a Sunset Boulevard. City lights streamed past. Jalen's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. He opened it. A video, already uploaded to Twitter. 73,000 views in 20 minutes. The caption read, CEO publicly humiliates kid at corporate gala. Turns out the kid OWNS the company. Full meltdown caught on camera. Jalen closed the app. Didn't watch. It's already online, he said quietly. Good. Evelyn's voice was firm. Let people see what happens when you mistake power for ownership. When you forget kindness matters more than authority. By morning, the video had 4 million views. Every major business outlet picked it up. Forbes, CNBC, Bloomberg, Wall Street Journal. The headlines were brutal. Brooks Industries CEO removed after humiliating company owner, a 12-year-old. Viral video shows executive's downfall in real time. The most expensive 30 seconds in corporate history. Victor Whitmore's career was over. Not just at Brooks Industries. Everywhere. Nobody would hire a CEO whose judgment was that catastrophically bad, who couldn't be bothered to learn who actually owned the company he was running, who thought cruelty was leadership. But Jalen didn't watch the news coverage, didn't read the articles, didn't check social media to see the comments. He woke up at 6:47 a.m., same as always, got dressed, black slacks, white button-down, his father's denim jacket. Evelyn drove him to Brooks Industries headquarters for the 9 o'clock board meeting. They pulled up to the building. 43 stories of glass and steel. His parents' names were still etched above the entrance in brushed metal. Brooks Industries, founded by Marcus and Diana Brooks. Jalen stared at it through the window. You ready? Evelyn asked. He thought about the red carpet, about papers scattered on the floor, about 200 people laughing, about walking out while they watched in silence. Yet he said, I'm ready. He grabbed his backpack. Same worn backpack. Same dusty straps. But when he walked through those doors, past security who nodded respectfully, past executives who stepped aside, past the receptionist who said, Good morning, Mr. Brooks, with genuine warmth. He was different. Not taller, not older, not louder, just clearer about who he was. The boy who owned everything, and finally knew it. The same 12-year-old, same backpack on his shoulders, same worn sneakers, but walking into a building that used to intimidate him with complete certainty. Because power isn't about who yells loudest. It's not about expensive suits or corner offices. It's about who owns the truth when everyone else is guessing. Victor Whitmore learned that lesson too late. In front of 200 witnesses, in front of cameras, in front of the entire business world. He mistook a child's silence for weakness. He laughed at worn sneakers and assumed poverty. He saw a backpack and thought irrelevant. He never asked questions, never checked documents, never imagined that the quiet boy in the faded jacket could dismantle his entire kingdom with 3 words. This company belongs to me. Never mistake silence for weakness. Never assume control means ownership. And never, ever, laugh at someone before you know who they are. Because the person you mock today might be signing your termination papers tomorrow. If this story reminded you that dignity matters more than dominance, and that underestimating someone is always a mistake, subscribe to this channel right now. Smash that like button and comment below. Have you ever proved someone wrong who doubted you? Share this with someone who needs to hear that being underestimated doesn't make you powerless. Follow for more stories where the underestimated become unstoppable.